Ambassador Velshara's four primary eyes blinked in rapid succession, a Kythian expression of profound disbelief. Her chitinous exoskeleton clicked softly as she shifted her weight, mandibles twitching with barely contained anxiety. "You cannot be serious, Admiral," she said, her translator rendering her clicking speech into standard galactic common. "A human? You're assigning a human as military advisor to the Coalition fleet?" Admiral Torvin Kess, his emerald scales gleaming under the command center's harsh lights, regarded her with the patient expression of someone who had anticipated this exact reaction. The Saurian commander was old by any species standards, his 300 cycles of service evident in the silvered edges of his scales and the way his tail, thick as a support beam, rested heavily on the polished floor. "I am entirely serious, Ambassador. In fact, I requested him specifically." Torvin's voice rumbled like distant thunder, each word measured and deliberate. "Captain Marcus Reeves has been approved by the Council for temporary assignment to the Third Fleet. He arrives within the hour." Velshara's antenna flattened against her head, a gesture of extreme distress. Beyond the viewport, the assembled fleet hung in the black, 300 ships from 47 different species, representing the greatest military force the Galactic Coalition had ever assembled. And somewhere out there, in the dark between stars, waited the Devourers. "Admiral, with respect, the humans have barely achieved faster-than-light capability. They've been part of the Coalition for less than a standard cycle. What could they possibly contribute to a military operation of this magnitude?" "Everything," Torvin said simply. He turned to face the viewport, his reflection ghostly in the transparent alloy. "Tell me, Ambassador, what do you know about Earth?" Velshira's translator emitted a sound approximating an uncomfortable sigh. "It's classified as a Class 12 Deathworld, gravity 1.3 times standard, atmospheric oxygen percentage dangerously high, extreme axial tilt causing radical seasonal variations, tectonically unstable, regular bombardment by stellar debris, home to several extinction-level predators and approximately 47 different species that produce venom lethal to most galactic species. The fact that sentient life evolved there at all is," she paused, searching for the word, "statistically improbable." "Improbable," Torvin repeated, a dry amusement in his tone. "Ambassador, in my 300 cycles of service, I have learned that the improbable often becomes invaluable. The Devourers operate in environments that would kill most of our soldiers within minutes. They attack in conditions our ships classify as unsurvivable. And yet, they survive. They thrive. Which is why we need every advantage," Velshara countered. "Not inexperienced primitives who evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill them," Torvin interrupted gently. "Where survival meant adapting to environments that shift from frozen wasteland to scorching desert within a single rotation. Where their own planet's atmosphere slowly corrodes their vessels. Where their star bathes them in radiation. Where megafauna that should have driven them to extinction instead became their livestock." He turned back to face her. "Do you understand what I'm telling you, Ambassador? Earth didn't just produce survivors. It produced a species that looked at their natural predators and decided to domesticate them." Velshara was silent for a long moment. Through the viewport, a transport shuttle detached from one of the human vessels, the UES Tenacity, a boxy, ugly ship that looked primitive compared to the sleek Coalition designs. "They frighten you," she said quietly. "They terrify me," Torvin admitted. "But fear is merely respect wearing different armor. The Devourers have ravaged 17 colony worlds. They've destroyed 4 Coalition fleets. Every conventional strategy has failed. So I called in the most unconventional strategist I could find. One from a species that shouldn't exist, on a world that shouldn't support life, who fought their way to the stars by refusing to accept the word impossible." The shuttle was approaching the command station now, its trajectory aggressive, its pilot clearly unconcerned with the graceful approach patterns favored by Coalition vessels. "Brace yourself, Ambassador," Torvin said, something that might have been anticipation in his voice. "You're about to meet Captain Marcus Reeves." The airlock cycled with a hiss of equalizing pressure, and Velshara's first thought was that the human was smaller than she'd expected. Her second thought was that she'd made a terrible mistake in her assessment. Captain Marcus Reeves stood perhaps 2 meters tall, average for his species, she knew, but shorter than most Coalition races. His frame was compact, muscles visible even through his dark blue uniform, but it was his face that commanded attention. Sharp features, a jaw that seemed carved from stone, and eyes, those predatory forward-facing eyes that swept the command center with the calm assessment of an apex predator evaluating its surroundings. He moved with a fluidity that seemed wrong for a species from a high-gravity world. Each step was deliberate, economical, and absolutely silent despite the heavy boots he wore. When he stopped before Admiral Torvin, he brought his right hand to his forehead in what she recognized as a human military salute. "Admiral Kess, permission to come aboard, sir." His voice was rough, textured, nothing like the melodious tones of most Coalition species. It reminded Velshera of grinding stone. "Granted, Captain. Welcome to Command Station Bastion." Torvin returned the gesture. His clawed hand adapted to the human custom. "This is Ambassador Velshera of the Kythian Confederacy. She'll be your liaison to the Coalition Council." Marcus turned those unsettling eyes on her, and Velshara felt her primary legs lock involuntarily. It was the same instinctive response she'd experienced once before, when a Velcran predator had cornered her during a diplomatic mission gone wrong. The recognition that she was being evaluated as potential prey. Then the human smiled, a baring of teeth that her hindbrain interpreted as a threat display, and extended his hand. "Ambassador, it's an honor." She forced herself to reach out with her primary manipulator, feeling her chitinous limb engulfed by his warm, soft flesh. His grip was firm but not crushing, and his skin temperature was shockingly high, nearly 40 degrees Celsius, like shaking hands with a furnace. "Captain Reeves," she managed, "welcome to the fleet." He released her hand and turned back to Torvin. "I've reviewed the mission brief, Admiral. The Devourers, hostile xenomorphs of unknown origin, have been attacking Coalition colonies for the past 2 standard years. 17 worlds lost, thousands of casualties. They operate in extreme environments, radiation zones, toxic atmospheres, temperature extremes. Standard Coalition forces have been ineffective." He paused. "That's where I come in." "Direct and to the point," Torvin observed with approval. "Yes, Captain. We need someone who can think like them. Someone from a world that breeds survivors." "With respect, Admiral, Earth doesn't breed survivors. It breeds fighters." Marcus moved to the holographic display at the center of the command deck. "May I?" At Torvin's nod, Marcus activated the display. A 3-dimensional representation of Coalition space materialized, with 17 red markers indicating lost worlds. "Pattern analysis," Marcus said, his fingers moving through the holographic controls with surprising dexterity. "The Devourers aren't random raiders. They're systematic. Each attack has been progressively closer to Coalition core worlds, but they're not taking the direct route." He highlighted a cluster of systems. "They're building something, testing our responses, learning our tactics." Velshara found herself leaning forward despite her unease. "Our strategic command came to the same conclusion, but we can't predict their next target." "Because you're thinking like diplomats and politicians," Marcus said, his tone matter-of-fact rather than insulting. "You're looking at population centers, resource worlds, strategic choke points. But predators don't hunt the strongest prey first. They test defenses. They probe for weakness." His hand swept across the display. "If I were them, my next target would be here, the Helios research station." Torvin's tail twitched. "Helios is a backwater listening post. Minimal strategic value." "Minimal obvious value," Marcus corrected. "But it's isolated, understaffed, and sits at the edge of a radiation belt that would cook most Coalition species in minutes. It's the perfect testing ground for an assault on better defended targets. And if they take it, they get access to every Coalition communication relay in this sector." The command center fell silent. Velshara watched as Torvin pulled up the Helios station data, his expression darkening. "Staff complement: 23 researchers and 5 security personnel," the Admiral read. "Defensive capabilities: minimal. Evacuation time required: 6 standard hours." He looked at Marcus with newfound respect. "How fast can the Devourers mobilize? Based on previous attack patterns? They're probably already in position." Marcus zoomed in on the Helios system. "We have maybe 12 hours before they strike, possibly less." "We can't reach them in time," Velshara said, her voice sharp with distress. "The nearest fleet elements are 18 hours out." "The nearest Coalition fleet elements," Marcus agreed. He looked at Torvin. "How fast can the tenacity make the jump?" "Your vessel?" Torvin pulled up the specifications, his eyes widening slightly. "Captain, Your ship's hyperspace rating is barely adequate for... How fast, Admiral? Torvin's claws clicked against the console. 10 hours. But Captain, the radiation in that system will be an annoyance, Marcus finished. Admiral, with your permission, I'd like to take a small task force to Helios. Buy time for the main fleet to arrive. Maybe even capture one of these devourers for interrogation. Velshara's antenna shot upright. You want to voluntarily enter a death trap? Marcus turned to her, and this time his smile was different. Not threatening, but fierce, joyful even. Ambassador, where I come from, we call that Tuesday. Despite herself, despite every instinct screaming that this human was dangerous, Velshara felt something unexpected. Hope. Geld 6 degree. Flowed. The UES Tenacity was, by Coalition standards, an aesthetic disaster. Where Coalition vessels were sleek and elegant, optimized for beauty as much as function, the human ship was a collection of angular plates, exposed structural supports, and jury-rigged systems that looked like they'd been designed by someone who'd never seen a proper starship. But as Velshara settled uncomfortably into the human-sized chair in the observation deck, she had to admit there was something purposeful about the design. Every surface was within easy reach. Every system had manual backups. The ship felt less like a technological marvel and more like a tool. Crude, perhaps, but effective. First time on a human ship? Asked Lieutenant Sarah Chen, the Tenacity's executive officer. The young human woman offered Velshara what appeared to be a beverage in a sealed container. Yes, Velshara admitted, accepting the drink with two of her manipulators. The container was warm. What is this? Coffee. Fair warning, most alien species find it too bitter. We've got other options if... Velshara took an experimental sip. The liquid was indeed bitter, but also complex, with layers of flavor her taste receptors struggled to categorize. More surprising was the caffeine content, enough to be toxic to several species she could name. It's tolerable, Chen grinned. That's the most enthusiastic review coffee's gotten from a non-human. You might survive this trip after all, Ambassador. Through the observation window, Velshara watched the Coalition escort vessels fall into formation around the Tenacity. Admiral Torvin had assigned 6 ships to Marcus's task force. 2 Kythian frigates, a Saurian destroyer, 2 Velcran scouts, and the human vessel. It was a respectable force, but against the Devourers. You're worried, Chin observed. It wasn't a question. Your captain is taking us into a system bathed in radiation to face an enemy that has destroyed forces 10 times our size to defend a station with less than 30 souls aboard. Velshara's antenna twitched. Yes, Lieutenant, I'm worried. Good. Worry keeps you sharp. Chen leaned against the viewport, her posture relaxed in a way that Velshara envied. But you're missing something important. We're not going to fight the Devourers head-on. The captain doesn't do suicide runs. Then what is his plan? No idea, Chen said cheerfully. He doesn't share details until go time. Says it keeps us flexible. That's insane. Welcome to the human military experience. Chen's expression grew more serious. Look, Ambassador, I know we're new to the galactic community. I know our ships are ugly and our methods are unconventional. But there's one thing you should understand about Captain Reeves. He's never lost a ship under his command. Not one. When things get bad, when the situation looks impossible, that's when he's at his best. Before Velshara could respond, the ship's intercom crackled to life. All hands, this is the captain. Jump to hyperspace in 60 seconds. Secure all stations and pray to whatever gods you've got. This is going to be rough. Chen pushed off the viewport and headed for the door. You'll want to strap in, Ambassador. The Tenacity's inertial dampeners are... well, they work, mostly. Velshara barely had time to secure herself in the observation chair before the ship lurched. The stars outside elongated, stretched, and then reality twisted in a way that made her 3 stomachs clench in synchronized protest. The Coalition ships jumped gracefully, their hyperspace engines creating smooth, controlled transitions. The Tenacity jumped like it was being fired from a cannon. Abdopti. 9 hours and 43 minutes later, they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Helios system, and Velshara immediately understood why Coalition ships avoided this region. The radiation readings were staggering. The system's twin stars were locked in a slow death spiral, their decaying orbits creating zones of lethal particle emission that fluctuated wildly. The research station hung at the edge of this maelstrom, its shields struggling against the constant bombardment. Radiation levels are 300 times Coalition safety standards, Chen reported from her station on the bridge. Shields holding, but we're taking minor damage to external sensors. Marcus stood at the command chair, his posture relaxed, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. Velshara had been invited to observe from a secondary station, and she found herself captivated by the calm efficiency of the human bridge crew. "Status of the station?" Marcus asked. "They've acknowledged our arrival, but report no sign of enemy contacts," responded the communications officer. "Chief Researcher Veltori sounds confused about why we're here." "They won't see them," Marcus murmured. He highlighted several points on the tactical display. There, and there. Thermal signatures masked by the radiation, but the patterns are wrong. Those are ships. Velshara stared at the display. She saw nothing but radiation noise and stellar interference. "Captain, I don't." "They're using the radiation as cover," Marcus explained, hiding their heat signatures in the stellar output. "It's brilliant, actually. Most species would never think to use a deadly environment as camouflage." He turned to his tactical officer. "Number and disposition?" The tactical officer, a broad-shouldered human named Kowalski, frowned at his display. "Sir, I'm reading 6, maybe 8 contacts. They're small, maybe frigate-sized, positioned around the station in a loose perimeter." "They're waiting," Marcus said. "For what?" The answer came 30 seconds later when the long-range sensors screamed a warning. "Hyperspace signatures," Chen called out. "Multiple contacts, large mass, distance, 50,000 kilometers and closing." The tactical display lit up with new contacts. 12 ships, each one massive, emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. Their design was unlike anything in the Coalition database. Organic curves mixed with brutal angles, hulls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Devourers," Velshara breathed. "Full battle group." "Well," Marcus said mildly, "that's more than I expected. Thoughts, anyone?" "We're outnumbered 3-1, outmassed at least 5-1, Kowalski reported, his voice steady. "Coalition escort ships are requesting orders." Marcus steepled his fingers, his expression thoughtful. "Tell the Coalition ships to form defensive positions around the station. Tight formation, overlapping shields. They're to protect the civilians and wait for the main fleet." "And us, sir?" Marcus smiled, and Velshara felt that predator recognition again, stronger than before. "We're going to do something stupid." "Jackass." The Tenacity broke formation and accelerated toward the Devourer fleet. Not at an angle, not with tactical subtlety, straight at them, engines burning at maximum thrust. "Captain," Velshara said, her voice steady despite her racing hearts, "this appears to be a direct attack run against a superior force, in a ship that is, by your own admission, obsolete by Coalition standards." "Yes," Marcus agreed. "That is, objectively speaking, suicide." "Yes. I feel I should point out—" "Ambassador," Marcus interrupted gently, "have you ever heard the human expression, 'The best defense is a good offense'? That's not actually a valid military strategy. Watch and learn." The Devourers weren't idle. As the Tenacity closed, 6 of their ships broke formation and accelerated to intercept. Energy signatures spiked across the tactical display as weapons charged. "Incoming fire," Kowalski reported. "Plasma torpedoes, 12 inbound." "Point defense. Evasive pattern Delta 7, Marcus ordered, his voice calm. "Chen, how are our friends doing?" "The smaller Devourer ships are moving to flank the station," Chen responded. "Coalition ships are engaged. Looks like they're trying to draw off the escorts." "Perfect. That's what they always do. Divide and overwhelm." Marcus leaned forward. "Kowalski, target the lead Devourer ship. I want a full spread, close-range detonation." "Sir, we're not in range." "We will be in 20 seconds." The Tenacity shuddered as point defense lasers carved apart the incoming torpedoes. 3 got through, splashing against shields that flared white-hot. Warnings blared across the bridge, but the human crew worked with practiced efficiency, their hands flying over controls, their communications clipped and professional. 15 seconds to weapons range, Kowalski counted down. 10. 5. "Now," Marcus said. The Tenacity's missile tubes vomited fire. 36 missiles, each one carrying a nuclear warhead that was illegal under 17 different Coalition treaties, streaked toward the Devourer ships. The aliens tried to evade, their ships proving surprisingly nimble, but Marcus had timed it perfectly. The missiles detonated not against hulls, but in the space between ships, creating a tsunami of electromagnetic radiation that washed over the Devourer formation. Their shields held, but their sensors went haywire. "Hard to starboard, Chen. Full burn into the radiation belt." "Sir, that's in order, Lieutenant." The Tenacity dove into a band of radiation so intense that Velshara's fur stood on end just looking at the readings. The ship's shields screamed in protest, External hull plating began to heat, and alarms wailed like dying animals. And the Devourers followed them. "They're pursuing," Chin reported, wonder in her voice. "All 6 ships? They're following us into the belt." "Of course they are," Marcus said. "They're ambush predators. They've never met prey that runs toward danger." He pulled up a 3-dimensional map of the radiation belt, his fingers tracing a path through the densest zones. "How long can our shields hold in this?" 20 minutes, maybe less, Chen said. "Captain, the Devourers are built for this. We're not." 20 minutes, Marcus repeated. "Then we'd better work fast. Kowalski, prepare boarding teams. Chen, find me the weakest ship in their formation." Velshara's antenna stood straight up. "Boarding teams? You want to board an enemy ship in the middle of a radiation belt?" Marcus turned to her, and his expression was patient, almost gentle. "Ambassador, you wanted to know how we're going to fight an enemy that operates in death zones? Simple. We go where they think we can't survive, and we punch them in the teeth while they're trying to figure out how we're still alive." The tactical display showed the Devourer ships closing, their formation tightening as they prepared to overwhelm the single human vessel. They didn't know they were following a predator that had evolved on a world where the environment itself was weaponized. "Target acquired," Chen announced. "Devourer frigate, port side of their formation. Shields fluctuating. Looks like they took some EMP damage from our nuclear spread." "Perfect. Kowalski, boarding teams ready?" "Marines are suited up and waiting, sir. Lieutenant Okonkwo says they're ready to rock and roll, whatever that means." "It means," Marcus said, standing from his command chair, "that the humans are about to teach the Devourers why you don't mess with a Deathworld species." He turned to Velshara. "Ambassador, you're about to see something that I suspect will either impress or horrify you. Possibly both. I recommend you stay on the bridge." "Captain, what are you?" But Marcus was already heading for the door, Chen falling into step beside him. "You have the bridge, Kowalski. Try not to die before I get back." "Aye, sir. Try not to die at all." Velshara watched the command chair, now empty, and the tactical display showing 6 massive warships bearing down on the Tenacity. Around her, the human bridge crew worked with grim determination, their movements efficient, their communication precise. She realized, with a mixture of awe and horror, that they weren't afraid. They were excited. The Tenacity's hangar bay was controlled chaos. 20 human Marines in heavy armor moved with purpose, checking weapons, verifying seals, and exchanging what Velshara was coming to recognize as human pre-combat rituals: fist bumps, short prayers, and the occasional joke that was met with dark laughter. She had followed Marcus against her better judgment, drawn by a morbid fascination with whatever insanity he was planning. Now, watching the Marines prepare, she understood why the other Coalition species found humans so unsettling. They were getting ready to board an enemy ship in the middle of a radiation belt while being pursued by a superior force, and they were acting like it was routine. "Ambassador," Marcus called from where he was donning his own armor. "Last chance to return to the bridge. What we're about to do is extremely dangerous." "I'm a diplomatic observer," Velshara said, drawing herself up to her full height. "It's my duty to witness Coalition operations even." She gestured at the organized madness around them. "Even this." Marcus's smile was approving. "All right then, someone get the ambassador into an EVA suit. Kowalski?" He tapped his helmet's comm system. "Status?" "Devourer frigate is maintaining pursuit." Kowalski's voice crackled through the hangar speakers. "Range, 30 kilometers and closing. Their shields are down to 70%. The radiation is grinding them down. We're down to 62%. Time to boarding range?" 4 minutes. "Perfect." Marcus finished sealing his armor and picked up a weapon that made Velshara's chitin itch just looking at it. Some kind of chemical propellant firearm. Primitive, but undeniably deadly. "Listen up, Marines. This is a snatch and grab operation. We board, we secure the command deck, we extract whatever data we can find about their command structure, and we blow charges on our way out. Time on target, 15 minutes. Any longer, and we'll cook in our suits. Questions?" "Sir," said Lieutenant Okonkwo, a woman whose armor made her look twice her already impressive size. "What about prisoners?" "Prioritize data retrieval, but if we can grab one of them, do it. Just remember, we have no idea what these things look like or how they'll react to humans." He checked his weapon one final time. Coalition forces have been fighting the Devourers for 2 years and have never seen one face to face. Every boarding attempt has ended with the aliens self-destructing their ships. "We're going to be faster than their self-destruct protocols." "And if we're not?" asked another Marine. "Then we'll have a very brief but exciting experience." Marcus's tone was matter-of-fact. "Mount up, Marines. Time to earn our pay." Velshara found herself being helped into a human EVA suit by a Marine who introduced himself as Corporal Jackson. The suit was designed for bipedal species and was uncomfortable for her six-limbed frame, but Jackson adapted it with practiced efficiency, muttering something about universal designs being anything but. 2 minutes to boarding range, Kowalski announced. Devourer target is launching countermeasures. Point defense is handling them, but we're going to take some hits. The ship shuddered as enemy fire found the shields. Damage reports flashed across Marcus's helmet display, visible to Velshara through the transparent faceplate. Chin, Marcus said over the comm. Once we're away, I want you to break right and lead the other Devourers on a chase through the radiation belt. Make them think they're winning. The moment our charges blow, you turn and burn for the station. Understood? Understood, Captain. Try not to get dead. I always do. The boarding craft, a small, boxy vessel that the humans charmingly called a brick, was waiting with its engines hot. The Marines filed in with practiced efficiency, Velshara awkwardly maneuvering her bulk through the human-sized hatch. Inside, the craft was Spartan. Acceleration harnesses, minimal life support, and weapons racks. No pretense of comfort or safety. Just a tool designed to get humans from one ship to another, preferably without dying in the process. 30 seconds, Marcus announced, strapping in beside Velshara. Ambassador, I'm going to be honest with you. Statistically speaking, boarding actions are among the most dangerous military operations humans engage in. Our casualty rates are typically around 40%. That's horrifying. Yes, we do it anyway. He checked her harness, tugging on the straps to ensure they were secure. His hands were steady, his movements confident. The thing you need to understand about humans, Ambassador, is that we evolved in an environment where the only difference between predator and prey was willingness to fight back. We learned early that the most dangerous move is often the safest one, because nobody expects prey to attack. The brick's engines roared to life. Through the small viewport, Velshara could see the Devourer frigate growing larger, its hull a writhing mass of organic-looking armor plating. 10 seconds to launch, the pilot announced. Brace for heavy G-forces. Here we go, Marcus said, and Velshara could swear she heard anticipation in his voice. The brick launched like a missile, acceleration slamming Velshara back into her harness with enough force to make her vision gray at the edges. The human Marines sat stoically, their faces visible through their helmet faceplates, showing expressions ranging from focused determination to outright excitement. The viewport filled with the Devourer ship. This close, Velshara could see details that long-range sensors had missed. The hull wasn't metal, but something that looked disturbingly biological, like chitin or bone. Weapon ports opened like mouths, and the whole structure seemed to pulse with a rhythm that suggested a living thing rather than a machine. Point defense is targeting us, the pilot reported calmly, taking evasive action. The brick jinked hard left, then right, then rolled along its axis. Velshara's three stomachs staged a unified revolt. The human Marines swayed with the motion, their magnetic boots keeping them anchored, their bodies adapting with disturbing ease. 15 seconds to impact, the pilot counted. Engineering, how's our breach package? Armed and ready, came the response. One-shaped charge, guaranteed to ruin someone's day. Lock it in. 5 seconds. The brick slammed into the Devourer hull with a sound like the universe breaking. The breach charge detonated, shaped explosives cutting through alien armor like a torch through flesh. Alarms screamed. Atmosphere vented. And then the Marines were moving. Marcus was first through the breach, his weapon up, his movements fluid despite the heavy armor. Velshara followed, her multiple limbs giving her stability the bipedal humans lacked, and found herself in an environment that defied description. The interior of the Devourer ship was wrong. The walls curved and pulsed like the interior of a living creature. The atmosphere was thick with vapor that stank of ammonia and sulfur. The temperature reading on her suit display showed 50 degrees Celsius, hot enough to cook most Coalition species. The Marines spread out, their weapons tracking potential threats. Their helmet lights cut through the murky atmosphere, revealing glimpses of architecture that seemed grown rather than built. Contact! Someone shouted. And then Velshara saw her first Devourer. It came around a corner at speed, moving on 6 legs that ended in razor talons. Its body was armored in overlapping plates of black chitin, and it had no discernible head, just a mass of sensory organs and mandibles at the front of its torso. It was fast, faster than anything she'd ever seen, and it leaped at the nearest Marine with a screech that her suit translator rendered as pure rage. The Marine, Jackson, she thought, fired his weapon. The chemical projectiles tore through the Devourer's armor, blue ichor spraying from the wounds. But it didn't stop. It crashed into Jackson, mandibles scything toward his throat. Then Marcus was there, moving faster than someone in heavy armor should be able to move. His fist, augmented by powered armor, crashed into the Devourer's carapace with a sound like splintering stone. The alien stumbled. Marcus's second blow took it in the sensory cluster, and it collapsed, twitching. "First contact," Marcus said into his comm, breathing hard. "Hostile, aggressive, armored. Standard weapons are effective but require multiple hits. Close combat is viable." He checked on Jackson, who was already back on his feet despite having been nearly disemboweled moments before. "Everyone all right?" A chorus of affirmatives. "Good. Okonkwo, take point. Let's find their command center." They moved deeper into the ship, encountering more Devourers. Each contact was brief and brutal. The aliens were fast and deadly, but the humans were faster and more deadly. They moved like they'd been born for this, adapting to the environment, to the enemy, with a fluidity that Velshara found both beautiful and terrifying. The Devourers tried everything. Ambushes from above, flanking attacks, flooding corridors with toxic gas. Each tactic failed against humans who'd evolved, dealing with environments that actively wanted them dead. "Command center ahead," Okonkwo reported. "Big door, lots of organic seals. Looks important." "Breach it," Marcus ordered. The Marines placed charges while covering angles, their movements coordinated through years of training and a shared understanding that Velshara was beginning to glimpse. They weren't just soldiers. They were a pack, a pride, a tribe that had bonded through shared danger. The charges blew, the door dissolved, and they swept in. The Devourer command center was a nightmare-made architecture. Organic consoles pulsed with bioluminescence. The walls were covered in what looked like neural tissue. And at the center, 3 Devourers that were larger than the others. Their carapaces marked with what might have been rank insignia, turned to face the intruders. One of them spoke. The sound was like tearing metal, but Velshara's translator caught it. "Impossible. The Deathworlders. Here." The Devourers knew. They knew what humans were. The firefight lasted 30 seconds. When it was over, 2 of the command Devourers were dead, and the third was pinned under debris, ichor pooling beneath its damaged carapace. Marcus knelt beside it, his helmet camera recording everything. "You speak Coalition Common?" "We know. Deathworlders," the Devourer wheezed. "We studied your world before you found the stars." "Why attack the Coalition? Testing, learning. The galaxy is weak. Soft species. Afraid of the dark." The Devourer's sensory organs focused on Marcus. "But you are different. You embrace the dark. You live in it. Where are your command ships? Your staging areas?" The Devourer made a sound that might have been laughter. "You think we fear death? We welcome it. But we fear you, the humans. You will destroy us all." "Only if you keep attacking innocent worlds," Marcus said. "Surrender. Face justice. Or..." The Devourer's carapace split. Something inside pulsed with light. Marcus recognized a self-destruct mechanism when he saw one. "Everyone out! Now! Move!" The Marines ran. Velshara found herself being half-carried by Corporal Jackson, her 6 legs scrambling for purchase as they raced through the alien ship. Behind them, the command center's self-destruct spread like a virus, organic walls rupturing, atmosphere venting, the whole ship beginning to tear itself apart. They reached the breach point. The brick was waiting, its pilot screaming at them to hurry. Marines dove through the opening. Velshara tumbled in after them, and Marcus came last, practically throwing himself into the craft as the hull behind him peeled away. "Go! Go!" he shouted. The brick's engines roared. They shot away from the Devourer ship just as it began to collapse, its entire structure liquefying in a grotesque display of biological self-destruction. "Chin," Marcus gasped over the comm. "Tell me you're clear." "Clear and waiting for you, sir. The Devourers broke off pursuit when their frigate started having problems. I think you rattled them." "Good. Rendezvous in 2 minutes. Kowalski, status on the station?" "Coalition forces held the line, sir. No casualties, station secure. And the main fleet just dropped out of hyperspace. Admiral Kess wants to speak with you immediately." Marcus leaned back against the brick's bulkhead, his armor scorched and dented, his breathing heavy. Around him, the Marines were checking their gear, treating minor wounds, and slowly coming down from combat adrenaline. "Well," he said, "that was exciting." Velshara stared at him, all 4 of her eyes wide. "Exciting?" "Captain, we just boarded an enemy ship in hostile conditions, fought through a dozen enemies, interrogated a prisoner, and barely escaped before the entire vessel self-destructed. Yes, Marcus agreed. Like I said, exciting. He looked at her, and his expression was gentle. Welcome to humanity, Ambassador. This is what we do. This is what we've always done. We see the impossible, and we spit in its eye. Despite everything, the fear, the violence, the sheer insanity of what she'd just witnessed, Velshara found herself making a clicking sound that was the Keithian equivalent of laughter. You're all completely insane, she said. Probably, Marcus admitted, but we're effective. The brick docked with the tenacity, and as they disembarked, Velshara noticed something she hadn't before. The human crew, every single one of them, wore their battered armor, their minor wounds, their exhaustion like badges of honor. They'd gone into hell and come back, and they'd done it because that's what humans did. They were Deathworlders, and the galaxy was just beginning to understand what that meant. Admiral Torvin Kess stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Judgment, watching the tactical feeds from the Helios system with an expression that his junior officers had learned meant profound contemplation. Around him, the Coalition fleet had settled into defensive positions, securing the research station and scanning for any lingering Devourer presence. The Devourers, however, had withdrawn completely. 11 ships had fled into hyperspace within minutes of their frigate's destruction, moving with a haste that suggested fear rather than strategic retreat. Admiral, his communications officer said, Captain Reeves and Ambassador Velshara are requesting permission to come aboard. Granted. Have them brought to my private briefing room. And Torvin paused, his tail swishing thoughtfully. Ensure the medical bay is prepared. I suspect the human will require treatment. Sir, Captain Reeves reports his injuries as minor. Yes, and I've read the human medical specifications. What they consider minor would hospitalize most species for a week. Prepare the medical bay. 20 minutes later, Torvin faced the unlikely pair across his briefing table. Marcus Reeves looked like he'd been through a meat grinder. His armor was being repaired, so he wore a standard uniform that couldn't quite hide the bandages beneath. Yet he sat straight, alert, his predator eyes focused. Velshara, by contrast, looked transformed. Her chitinous plating had dulled from the stress, but her antennae were erect, alert. Something had changed in the ambassador, something fundamental. Captain Reeves, Torvin began, I've reviewed your mission logs. You boarded a Devourer vessel while under pursuit by a superior force, in an environment that should have killed your entire team, fought your way to their command center, extracted intelligence, and escaped before their self-destruct could claim any Coalition lives. He leaned back in his seat. I've served for 300 cycles. I've witnessed battles that defined eras, and I can honestly say I've never seen anything quite so audacious. Thank you, sir, Marcus said simply. That wasn't a compliment, Torvin said. It was an observation. You risked your crew, your ship, and the Coalition's diplomatic representative on what amounted to a gamble. A calculated gamble, Admiral. One that paid off. Indeed. Which is why I'm not having you court-martialed. Torvin activated the holographic display between them. The intelligence you gathered is troubling. The Devourers knew about humanity before we made first contact? That's what the commander said before triggering his self-destruct. We studied your world, before you found the stars. Marcus's jaw tightened. Sir, I think we've been under observation for longer than we realized. The Devourers called us Deathworlders, like it was a specific classification. They fear us. As they should, Velshara interjected. Both males turned to look at her, and she clicked her mandibles in what might have been embarrassment. I mean, I witnessed what your Marines can do, Captain. In environments where my people would die within minutes, yours thrived. The Devourers are adapted for toxic conditions, extreme temperatures, high radiation. They thought these environments were their advantage. But humans evolved in all those conditions simultaneously, Torvin finished. Earth has radiation from its star, toxic elements in its atmosphere, temperature extremes, and enough biological hazards to make a death world twice as harsh seem pleasant, his eyes fixed on Marcus. The Devourers thought they'd found a weakness in Coalition forces. Instead, they drew the attention of a species that sees their advantages as minor inconveniences. There's more, sir, Marcus said. He pulled up data from his helmet recording. When I interrogated the Devourer commander, it said something else. We fear you, the humans. You will destroy us all. Not might destroy, will destroy. It spoke with certainty. Prophecy? Torvin's tone was skeptical. The Devourers aren't known for mysticism. Not prophecy. Analysis. Sir, I think they've been running simulations, studying human history, our conflicts, our tactics, and every scenario they've modeled ends with their defeat. Marcus leaned forward. The question is, why? We're one species among hundreds in the coalition. Why would they fear us specifically? Velshara spoke up, her voice thoughtful. Because you don't think like other species. I've observed coalition military operations, Captain. We follow protocols. We have established doctrines. When faced with a superior enemy, we retreat, regroup, and request reinforcements. It's logical. It's sensible. And it's predictable, Marcus said, understanding dawning in his eyes. Exactly. But humans? You attacked when outnumbered. You entered a death zone voluntarily. You boarded an enemy ship while being pursued by others. None of that makes sense tactically. But it worked because the Devourers couldn't predict it. Velshara's antennae quivered. You don't just think outside the box, Captain. You don't even acknowledge the box exists. Torvin rumbled his approval. The ambassador makes an excellent point. Captain, how would you handle the Devourer threat going forward? Marcus considered for a moment, his fingers drumming on the table in a rhythmic pattern. Hit them where they're strong. Keep doing the unpredictable. They've spent the last 2 years probing Coalition defenses, learning our patterns. Time to teach them that the Coalition has no patterns because humans don't fight fair. He pulled up a star chart. Based on the trajectory of their retreat, I'd estimate their staging area is somewhere in the Kraskov Nebula. High radiation, dense particle clouds, perfect for their biology. Most Coalition ships can't operate there for more than a few hours. And human ships? Torvin asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Could probably set up a permanent base if we really wanted to. The radiation is annoying but manageable with proper shielding. Marcus's smile was sharp. Sir, if you want to win this war, you need to stop fighting on their terms. Bring the battle to them. Make them react to us instead of us reacting to them. You're suggesting we invade their home territory. I'm suggesting we make them understand that humans protect their pack. They attacked Coalition worlds. They threatened Coalition citizens. They need to learn that when you hurt our people, we don't just defend. We hunt. Marcus's voice was cold now, controlled fury beneath the professional demeanor. Make an example of them. Show the galaxy that the Coalition doesn't just have strong defenses. It has humans, and humans don't lose. The briefing room fell silent. Torvin studied the young human captain, seeing past the battered uniform and the injuries to the core of iron beneath. This was what Earth had forged. Warriors who saw impossible odds as opportunities, who turned their world's cruelty into strength. Ambassador Velshara, Torvin said carefully, you spent more time with humans in the last day than most Coalition citizens will in a lifetime. What is your official recommendation regarding Captain Reeves's proposal? Velshara was quiet for a long moment, her antennae twitching as she processed. Finally, she spoke. 3 days ago, Admiral, I thought bringing humans into this conflict was madness. I believed they were too primitive, too aggressive, too alien for integration into Coalition military structure. She looked at Marcus, her expression unreadable. I was wrong. Not about humans being alien. They absolutely are. But that's not a weakness. It's exactly what we need. She stood, her 6 legs supporting her considerable mass with newfound confidence. The Devourers have defeated us because they operate in ways Coalition species cannot. They thrive in death zones. They adapt to our tactics. And they've exploited every weakness in our protocols. But Captain Reeves and his crew didn't just survive in those conditions. They excelled. They didn't follow our protocols. They created new ones on the fly. And they didn't just defeat the Devourers. They terrified them. Torvin's tail swished with interest. You're recommending we adopt human tactics fleet-wide? I'm recommending, Velshara said firmly, that we do more than adopt their tactics. I'm recommending that Captain Reeves be given command of a task force specifically designed to prosecute this war the way humans prosecute wars, aggressively, creatively, and with absolute prejudice against those who threaten innocence. She turned to Marcus. Captain, you said humans protect their pack. It's time the Coalition became part of that pack. Marcus stood as well, coming to attention. Admiral, if you're asking me to lead a strike force into Devourer territory, I accept. Give me 12 ships, crews willing to learn, and 3 months. I'll teach them how to fight like humans, and then we'll show the Devourers what happens when you pick a fight with a Deathworld species. Torvin let the silence stretch, considering. What Marcus was proposing went against centuries of Coalition military doctrine. It was aggressive, risky, and by traditional standards, reckless. It was also, Torvin suspected, exactly what they needed. Captain Reeves, he said formally, by authority vested in me by the Coalition Council, I hereby grant you a field promotion to commander and assign you leadership of Task Force Deathworld. You will have your 12 ships, and you may select your personnel from any branch of Coalition forces. Your mission: train Coalition forces in human warfare tactics and use those tactics to eliminate the Devourer threat permanently. He stood, extending his clawed hand in the human gesture of respect. Show us how your species conquered a planet that tried to kill you every day of your evolution. Teach us to fight like Deathworlders. Marcus gripped the Admiral's hand, his smaller human fingers barely wrapping around the Saurian's scaled palm. But his grip was firm, confident. Yes, sir. It would be my honor. As Marcus and Velshara departed, Torvin remained in the briefing room, staring at the star chart displaying the Kraskov Nebula. Somewhere in those clouds of radiation and debris, the Devourers were regrouping, probably congratulating themselves on their tactical withdrawal. They had no idea what was coming. For 300 cycles, Torvin had served the Coalition with distinction. He had fought in 14 major conflicts, negotiated 30 peace treaties, and earned every honor his species could bestow. But in all that time, he had never felt what he felt now: anticipation. The humans had brought something to the Coalition that couldn't be quantified or taught: the absolute certainty that the impossible was merely the improbable that hadn't happened yet. They looked at the Devourer's advantages and saw only targets. They looked at death zones and saw battlefields. They were exactly what the galaxy needed. And may the gods help anyone foolish enough to stand against them. 3 weeks later, Commander Marcus Reeves stood in the command center of Coalition Training Station Apex, watching 12 ships maneuver through a simulated asteroid field while under fire from automated defense platforms. The ships, representing 7 different Coalition species designs, were performing adequately by traditional standards, which meant they were failing by human standards. Lieutenant Chen, Marcus said, without turning from the tactical display, please inform Captain Velas that if he continues to retreat from superior firepower, I will personally pilot his ship through the next exercise and show him what his vessel can actually do. Sarah Chen, now formally assigned as Task Force Deathworld's executive officer, grinned. Sir, Captain Velethas outranks you in the Kithian military. Then he should know better than to fly like he's commanding a pleasure yacht. Marcus highlighted one ship on the display, the Tenacity, under Lieutenant Okonkwo's command. Now that's how you use an asteroid field. She's using the obstacles for cover while angling for a shot on the platform's blind spots. Aggressive positioning, taking calculated risks. She learned from the best, sir. She learned from experience. That's what we're trying to give everyone else: experience in how to fight when the odds are against you. He activated the fleet-wide comm. All ships, exercise terminated. Debrief in conference room A in 30 minutes. Be prepared to explain your decisions. As the ships disengaged and began forming up for return to the station, Velshara entered the command center. The Kithian ambassador, now officially assigned as Coalition liaison to Task Force Deathworld, had adapted remarkably to her new role. She wore a modified uniform that accommodated her 6-limbed anatomy, and she moved through the human-dominated space with newfound confidence. Commander, she greeted him, Admiral Kess is requesting an update on training progress. Tell him we're making progress, but it's like teaching fish to fly. Coalition forces have been trained for defensive operations and set-piece battles. We're trying to retrain centuries of doctrine in a matter of weeks. Marcus pulled up performance metrics. The good news is that most species can physically perform the maneuvers we're teaching. The bad news is that it goes against every instinct they have. Perhaps a demonstration would help, Velshara suggested. Show them what humans can do, rather than just telling them. Marcus considered this. Actually, that's not a bad idea. Chin, how many of our people are currently station-side? About 40, sir. Mix of Marines, pilots, and support crew. Perfect. Ambassador, would you be willing to help organize a cultural exchange? I want Coalition personnel to spend time with our people in non-combat situations. Let them see how we think, how we approach problems, how we view risk. Velshara's antenna perked up with interest. What did you have in mind? Something humans excel at, Marcus said with a slight smile. Competitive sports, problem-solving under pressure, and telling stories about past missions where everything went wrong, but we succeeded anyway. Let them see that what looks like recklessness is actually calculated risk-taking based on understanding our own capabilities. I'll arrange it, though I should warn you, most species find human recreational activities to be borderline suicidal. Even better, let's show them that what they see as suicidal, we see as Tuesday. Off. The cultural exchange took place in the station's main recreation facility, hastily converted into what the humans cheerfully called a warrior's lounge. Coalition personnel from all 12 ships mingled uneasily with human crew members, the species barrier creating visible tension. Marcus watched from a raised observation platform as Lieutenant Okonkwo organized a game of what she called Low-gravity dodgeball, a human sport adapted for zero-G environments. The rules were simple. 2 teams, 1 ball, last team with active players wins. What made it distinctly human was the contact allowed and the velocity at which the ball could be thrown. "This is madness," muttered Captain Velthus, the Keithian officer who commanded one of Task Force Deathworld's frigates. He stood beside Marcus, his antenna flat against his head in consternation. "Humans throw that sphere hard enough to cause injury." "Minor injury," Marcus corrected, "and only if you don't learn to dodge." "But why? What purpose does this serve?" "It teaches you to track multiple moving objects, to predict trajectories under pressure, to work as a team, and to accept that taking hits is part of winning." Marcus gestured to the court where a mixed team of humans and Velkrin scouts were demolishing a team of Keithian officers. "Watch the Velkrin, Lieutenant Starch. She's applying the lessons, using her natural speed not to avoid contact entirely, but to choose which hits to take and which to dodge. That's the human way. Accept that some damage is inevitable and focus on dealing more than you receive." As he spoke, Satarch took a ball to the shoulder but simultaneously launched herself across the court to tag out 3 opposing players. Her team erupted in cheers, humans and Velkrin celebrating together. "Calculated sacrifice," Velthas murmured, his antennae slowly rising. "She traded minor injury for major advantage." "A weapon. Ram enemy vessels, provide cover for ships with heavier weapons, draw fire so others can strike. Your weaknesses become strengths when you stop fighting the way the enemy expects." Velthas was silent for a long moment, watching the game below. Another round had started, and this time, several coalition officers were volunteering to play. The initial hesitation was giving way to competitive spirit. "Commander," Velthas said quietly, "I've been in the Kithian Defense Fleet for 23 cycles. I've commanded ships in 6 engagements. And in all that time, I've never once considered using my vessel itself as a weapon. The thought is instinctively wrong." "I know, but instincts can be trained. That's what we're doing here, not replacing your instincts, but adding new ones." Marcus turned to face the Keithian captain fully. "Your people evolved as hive builders. Cooperation, efficiency, preservation of resources. Those are excellent traits. But sometimes, to save the hive, you have to be willing to sacrifice a worker. We're teaching you when sacrifice is tactical and when it's necessary." "And humans learned this on Earth?" "Humans learned this because Earth gave us no choice. Every other predator was bigger, faster, stronger. Our only advantages were our brains and our willingness to take risks others wouldn't." Marcus gestured to the humans below, laughing and playing alongside alien crew members. "We're persistence hunters, Captain. We don't have to be the strongest. We just have to outlast everything else." The training intensified over the following weeks. Marcus pushed his task force through scenarios that ranged from difficult to seemingly impossible, navigating debris fields at high speed, engaging enemies while managing catastrophic system failures, boarding operations in toxic atmospheres. The Coalition crews complained, struggled, and occasionally failed spectacularly. But slowly, incrementally, they adapted. Marcus stood in the Tenacity's observation deck, reviewing after-action reports, when Ambassador Velshara found him. It was late by station time, and most of the crew were in their rest cycles. "You should sleep, Commander," she said, settling onto a reinforced bench designed for her species' anatomy. "Even humans need rest." "I'll sleep when I'm satisfied we're ready." He didn't look up from his datapad. "Admiral Kess wants us operational in 2 weeks. We're making progress, but I'm not sure it's fast enough." "You're too hard on yourself. The transformation I've witnessed in our crews is remarkable." Velshara gestured to the starfield beyond the viewport. 3 weeks ago, Captain Velthus would have called this entire operation insane. Now he's running drills where he deliberately puts his ship at risk to test his crew's reactions. "You're changing how we think about warfare." "Maybe." Marcus finally set down the pad. "But thinking differently doesn't guarantee victory. The Devourers are still out there, still attacking Coalition worlds. We've bought time, but eventually we'll have to face them again, and when we do, they'll be ready for us. Will we be ready for them?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, his eyes distant. "You know what the hardest part of being a commander is, Ambassador? It's sending people into danger knowing that some of them won't come back. Human tactics are effective, but they're aggressive. They require people to take risks, to put themselves in harm's way. I can teach Coalition forces how to fight like humans, but I can't give them the one thing that makes human tactics work: our acceptance of mortality." "You think Coalition species fear death more than humans?" "I think most species see death as the end of everything. Humans see it as something else. We have this concept, legacy. The idea that what we do matters beyond our individual lives. That dying for something important is better than living for nothing. He turned to face her. It's not that we don't fear death, Ambassador. We just fear meaningless death more. And that distinction makes all the difference in combat. Velshara clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. In Keithian culture, we believe that each individual is part of the hive mind. Our lives matter because we contribute to the whole. When one of us dies, the hive remembers, and that memory shapes future generations. That's beautiful, Marcus said genuinely. And it's not so different from human philosophy. We just express it differently. He pulled up a star chart showing the Kraskov Nebula. When we go after the Devourers, people will die. Human, Kithian, Saurian, Velcran. Death doesn't discriminate. But those deaths will matter because they'll protect billions of lives across Coalition space. That's legacy. That's meaning. You sound like you're preparing for a suicide mission. I'm preparing for a difficult mission that will likely involve casualties. There's a difference. Marcus's expression hardened. But I'm also preparing to win. Because that's what humans do. We look at the impossible, and we find a way to make it merely improbable. Then we beat those odds through preparation, training, and sheer stubborn refusal to quit. Before Velshara could respond, the station's alert system activated. Chen's voice came through the comm system, urgent but controlled. Commander Reeves to the command center. Priority alert from Admiral Kess. Marcus was moving before Chen finished speaking, Velshara scrambling to keep pace with his ground-eating stride. They reached the command center in under 2 minutes to find Chen pulling up real-time tactical feeds. What's the situation? Marcus demanded. Devourer attack, sir. 3 colony worlds, simultaneous strikes. This is different from their previous patterns. They're hitting harder and faster. Chen highlighted the affected systems. New Kythis, Velcra Prime, and, she paused, her face paling, Earth Colony 7. Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. Earth Colony 7, humanity's first extrasolar settlement, home to 50,000 colonists, including families, children. Details, he said, his voice flat, controlled fury barely leashed. Attacks began 17 minutes ago. All 3 colonies are reporting heavy bombardment from orbit. Ground forces have landed at New Kythis and Velcra Prime. Earth Colony 7 is under siege, but holding. The colonists activated their emergency protocols. Ground forces? Marcus focused on that detail. The Devourers have never deployed ground troops before. They're adapting, sir, Velshara said grimly, learning from their encounters with us. The tactical display updated, showing the size of the Devourer forces. Marcus's jaw tightened. 20 ships per target, 60 vessels total. That's more than half their known fleet strength. He turned to Chen. Where's Admiral Kess? The main Coalition fleet is 18 hours from the nearest colony. He's ordering us to hold position until... Belay that. Marcus's voice cut through the command center like a blade. Chen, recall all Task Force Deathworld personnel immediately. I want every ship ready to jump in 30 minutes. Sir, Admiral Kess's orders. Admiral Kess isn't human. He doesn't understand what happens when you threaten humanity's children. Marcus pulled up the jump calculations for Earth Colony 7. We're closer than the main fleet. We can reach EC7 in 6 hours. Commander, Velshara interjected carefully. With respect, Task Force Deathworld consists of 12 ships. The Devourers have 20 vessels at each target. The tactical math isn't math, it's will. Marcus locked eyes with her. Ambassador, I told you humans protect their pack. Earth Colony 7 isn't just a coalition settlement. It's humanity's first step into the stars. It's our statement that we belong here, that we have a place in the galaxy. And every human in this task force will die before we let the Devourers destroy that. He activated fleet-wide comms. All Task Force Deathworld vessels, this is Commander Reeves. Devourer forces are attacking 3 coalition colonies simultaneously, including Earth Colony 7. The main fleet is too far away. We are not. We jump in 30 minutes. This is what we've been training for. The moment when the odds are against us. When conventional wisdom says to wait for backup. When every tactical manual says we should hold position. His voice intensified. We're not following the manual. We're writing a new one. We're showing the Devourers and the entire galaxy that when you attack the coalition, you don't just face our defenses. You face humanity's rage. And that rage doesn't wait for permission. Prepare for combat. Reeves out. The command center was silent. Chen stared at him with a mixture of awe and concern. Velshara's antenna had flattened completely. Commander, Chen said quietly, if we do this without Admiral Kess's authorization, it's a court-martial offense. I know. We'll be outnumbered nearly 2 to 1. I know. We could all die. Marcus's smile was sharp as a knife. Then we'll die making sure the Devourers learn to fear humans. But we won't die, Lieutenant, because we're going to do what we do best, the impossible. Get me a comm link to Admiral Kess. I'm not going to disobey orders. I'm going to convince him to change them. Admiral Torvin Kess's face on the holographic display showed the expression his subordinates had learned to recognize, controlled fury mixed with grudging admiration. Commander Reeves, he said with dangerous calm, you are proposing to take 12 ships, only 3 of which are human vessels, against a Devourer battle group of 20 ships. Ships that have, may I remind you, destroyed every coalition force that has engaged them in fleet actions. And you want my blessing for this suicide run. It's not a suicide run, Admiral. It's a rescue operation. Marcus stood at attention in the Tenacity's ready room, fully aware that his career was balanced on a knife's edge. Sir, the Devourers are hitting 3 targets simultaneously specifically because they know we can't defend all 3. They're counting on us to make the logical choice, protect the most valuable targets, sacrifice the outliers. Earth Colony 7 has the smallest population and the least strategic importance. By traditional logic, it's expendable. But humans don't accept that logic, Torvin said, understanding dawning in his expression. No, sir, we don't. Human history is filled with battles where a small force held against impossible odds to buy time for civilians to evacuate. Thermopylae, the Alamo, Rorke's Drift. We have a cultural memory of standing fast when everything says to run. EC7's colonists are activating emergency protocols because they know someone is coming. We cannot, we will not, prove them wrong. Torvin was silent for a long moment. You realize that if I authorize this, I'm betting the lives of 12 crews on your human stubbornness? With respect, Admiral, you already made that bet when you formed Task Force Deathworld. Marcus leaned forward. Sir, we've spent 3 weeks training coalition forces to think like humans, to take calculated risks, to see opportunities where others see only danger. This is the moment that training either means something or it doesn't. The crews believe. They're ready. All they need is authorization. And if you fail, if the Devourers destroy your task force, then the galaxy will know that humans tried, that we stood between monsters and innocence. That's legacy, Admiral. That's meaning. Marcus's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. But we won't fail, because failing means letting children die, and humans don't do that. Not while we're still breathing. Another silence. Then Torvin's expression shifted, his scales rippling with what might have been respect. Commander Reeves, by authority vested in me by the Coalition Council, I am authorizing Task Force Deathworld to proceed to Earth Colony 7 at best possible speed. Your mission, evacuate all colonists and delay Devourer forces until the main fleet arrives. You are weapons-free on any hostile contacts. He paused. And Commander, make them regret picking a fight with a species that doesn't know how to quit. Aye, sir. We'll bring our people home. Reeves out. As the hologram faded, Marcus allowed himself one moment of relief before shifting into combat mode. He activated fleet-wide comms. All ships. This is Reeves. We have authorization. Jump in 5 minutes. Mission briefing en route. He pulled up the tactical files on Earth Colony 7. Lieutenant Chen, what do we know about EC7's defensive capabilities? Chen appeared on his secondary display, already deep in analysis. Colony defense consists of an orbital defense grid, 6 automated platforms with kinetic weapons. Atmospheric defense is limited to small arms and 3 atmospheric fighters. Ground forces. 200 Colonial Guard militia, mostly trained for local peacekeeping, not military combat. So they're outgunned, outmanned, and fighting a technologically superior enemy. Typical human scenario. Marcus pulled up the colony's layout. What's their population distribution? Main settlement contains 42,000 colonists, 3 outlying research stations with roughly 8,000 total. The colonists have been drilling evacuation procedures since the Devourer threat emerged. They can have everyone at designated pickup points within 2 hours of receiving the order. Good. Once we arrive, we'll have exactly that long to break the Devourer siege and establish an evacuation corridor. Marcus began plotting ship assignments. The Tenacity will lead the assault on the Devourer flagship. I want the Keithian frigates Silverwind and Morningstar to focus on the Devourer support vessels. Your shields will be critical for protecting the evacuation transports. Velcrin scouts will perform hit-and-run strikes to disrupt their formation. Saurian destroyers will provide heavy fire support. Sir, Chen said carefully, that puts the Tenacity against their command ship. We're outgunned. Yes, but we're also piloted by humans who have dealt with worse odds before. Marcus smiled grimly. Besides, we're not trying to destroy them. We're trying to make them so angry at us that they forget about the colony long enough for everyone to evacuate. That's a human specialty. being incredibly annoying. "Jump in 30 seconds, the navigator announced. Marcus settled into his command chair, his mind already 3 moves ahead. The Devourers had made a mistake. They targeted humans thinking they were just another coalition species. They were about to learn the difference between defending territory and protecting family. "All ships," he said over the fleet channel, his voice carrying to every coalition species under his command. "In a few minutes, we're going to jump into hell. The enemy outnumbers us. They have superior firepower. By every conventional measure, we should lose. But conventional measures don't account for one critical factor. The beings under attack are under our protection. They're our people, our pack, and we don't abandon our pack." He paused, letting that sink in. "I've trained with each of you. I've seen what you can do when you stop thinking about what's safe and start thinking about what's necessary. Today, we prove that Task Force Deathworld isn't just humans teaching aliens to fight. It's a new kind of military, one that combines the best of all our species. The Kithian determination, the Velcran speed, the Saurian firepower, the human stubbornness. Together, we are stronger than the sum of our parts." Jump in 5, 4, 3, 2. Reality twisted. The stars elongated, and Task Force Deathworld plunged into battle. Dub. They emerged from hyperspace directly into chaos. Earth Colony 7 hung against the black of space, its single moon scarred by weapons fire. The orbital defense platforms were mostly destroyed, debris fields marking their last positions. On the planet's surface, fires burned where Devourer bombardment had struck. And surrounding it all, like predators circling wounded prey, were 20 Devourer warships. "Tactical assessment," Marcus snapped. "Devourer command ship is maintaining high orbit over the main settlement," Kowalski reported from Tactical. "Support vessels are distributed in a perimeter formation. They've detected our arrival, energy signatures spiking across their fleet. Sir, they're preparing to engage." "Good. Let's give them something to shoot at. All ships, execute pattern Delta. Scatter formation, maximum aggression. Make them think we're attacking with everything we've got." Marcus leaned forward. "Helm, bring us about. Target the command ship. Full burn." The Tenacity leaped forward like a missile, its inferior human engines somehow coaxing more speed than the specifications suggested possible. Behind them, the task force ships scattered, each one moving to prearranged positions. The Devourers responded exactly as Marcus had predicted. They contracted their formation to meet the threat, ships breaking off from orbital positions to intercept the attacking coalition forces. "They're taking the bait," Chen observed. 12 ships moving to intercept us, 8 remaining in orbital positions. "Perfect. Veldas, this is Reeves. Execute Phase 2. "Acknowledged, Commander." Captain Veldas's voice carried new confidence. "All ships, with me. Time to show these monsters what a proper defense looks like." The Kithian frigates, accompanied by the Velcran scouts and 1 Saurian destroyer, broke away from the main formation and accelerated toward the planet. Not to engage the Devourers, but to slip past them, using the larger ships as cover to reach the evacuation points. The Devourers tried to intercept, but the Tenacity and the remaining task force ships pressed the attack with such ferocity that the enemy couldn't break away without exposing their command ship. "Range to target. 50,000 kilometers, the helm reported. "Weapons free," Marcus ordered. "Show them what happens when they threaten our families." The Tenacity's missile tubes spoke, nuclear-tipped warheads screaming across the void. The Devourer command ship's point defense activated, shooting down most of the missiles, but 3 got through. The nuclear detonations washed over its shields, electromagnetic pulses disrupting its sensor arrays. "Direct hit. Shields down to 80%, Kowalski called. "Sir, the other Devourers are converging on our position. We're going to be swarmed in about 90 seconds. "Then we'd better make 90 seconds count." Marcus pulled up the command ship specifications, such as they were. The humans had been analyzing Devourer vessels since their first encounter, building a database of vulnerabilities. Target their shield generators, port and starboard flanks, 30 degrees up from the equator. Sustained fire, kinetic rounds. The Tenacity's railguns, primitive by coalition standards but devastatingly effective at close range, opened fire. Tungsten penetrators traveling at a significant fraction of light speed hammered into the Devourer shields, each impact cascading energy through the defensive systems. The enemy ship returned fire, plasma torpedoes and particle beams lancing out. The Tenacity juked, rolled, and dove through a debris field from the destroyed defense platforms, using every trick of human piloting skill to avoid the worst of the barrage. "Shields down to 40%, Chen reported, her hands flying over her console. "Minor damage to sections 7 through 12. We can take maybe 2 more hits like that." "We won't need to." Marcus watched the tactical display, counting down. 20 seconds. On the planet below, the evacuation was in full swing. Civilian transports were lifting off from designated zones protected by the combined shields of Velthas's force. The remaining Devourer ships tried to intercept, but the Coalition vessels moved with a coordination born of weeks of intensive training. The Kythian frigates had become masters of defensive shielding, their vessels literally interposing themselves between civilian ships and enemy fire. The Velcran scouts harried any Devourer that tried to pursue, their speed and maneuverability making them impossible to pin down. And the Saurian destroyers' heavy weapons punished any enemy ship that stayed in one place too long. It was working. The colonists were escaping, but the price was mounting. "Sir, the Morning Star has taken heavy damage," Chin reported. "They're venting atmosphere and have lost maneuvering thrusters." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Can they maintain shields?" "Barely. Captain Kethfor reports they'll hold position until the last civilian transport clears." "Understood. Tell him." Marcus was interrupted by a massive impact that threw him against his restraints. The bridge lights flickered. "Report!" "Direct hit. Aft shields collapsed. We've got hull breaches on decks 5 and 6. Engineering is rerouting power, but we're down to 30% combat effectiveness." Chin's voice was strained. "Sir, we can't take many more hits." Marcus looked at the tactical display. They'd been in combat for 8 minutes. The evacuation required another 7 to complete. 7 minutes was an eternity in space combat. "All task force ships," he said into the fleet channel. "This is Reeves. I know we're taking damage. I know the odds look bad. But look at your tactical displays. Look at those civilian transports escaping. Every second we hold, more lives are saved. That's what we're here for. That's what makes us different from the Devourers. We protect the weak, not prey on them." He switched to direct comm with the Tenacity's crew. "Engineering, I need whatever you can give me. Helm, evasive pattern Omega. Keep us moving. Make us hard to hit. Weapons, focus on the command ship. If we can cripple their flagship, their formation will falter." The ship shuddered again as another barrage struck home, but the Tenacity kept fighting. Around them, Task Force Deathworld ships danced through the void, trading fire with enemies that should have overwhelmed them through sheer numbers. But numbers didn't account for motivation. For the Devourers, this was another battle in a long war. For the Coalition forces, especially the humans, this was personal. On the planet's surface, the last civilian transports lifted off. 42,000 colonists crammed into every available vessel, racing for the safety of orbit while warships bled to buy them time. "Final transport is clear of the gravity well," Chen reported. "All civilians accounted for. They're jumping to hyperspace in 30 seconds. Marcus felt a weight lift from his chest. They'd done it. Against all odds, they'd saved everyone. Now they just had to survive long enough to escape themselves. "All ships, prepare for tactical withdrawal. We'll cover each other's retreat, staggered jumps to prevent pursuit." Marcus pulled up jump coordinates. "Velcran scouts go first. You're the fastest and most vulnerable. Then the damaged ships. The Tenacity will be the last to jump." "Commander," Velshira's voice came through a secondary channel. "The Morning Star can't jump. Their hyperspace drive was damaged in the last attack. They're dead in space." Marcus's hands clenched. "How many crew?" 47 Kythians. 47 lives. Coalition allies who'd followed him into hell because he'd asked them to. Who'd fought like humans because he'd taught them to. Who'd held the line while civilians escaped because that's what the mission demanded. He couldn't leave them. "Velthas, status on your ship?" "The Silver Wind is battered but functional, Commander. What do you need?" "Can you tow the Morning Star?" There was a pause. "Towing a ship under combat conditions?" "Commander, the stress on both vessels." "Can you do it?" Another pause, longer this time. Then, "Yes. If you give us cover, we can attach tow cables and pull them clear." "You've got it. All ships, new priority. Protect the Silver Wind and the Morning Star. We're leaving together, or not at all." Chin turned to look at him, her expression worried. "Sir, that's going to take at least 3 minutes. The Devourers. We'll learn that humans don't abandon anyone. Execute the plan, Lieutenant." The next 3 minutes were the longest of Marcus's life. The Tenacity and the remaining combat-capable ships formed a protective screen around the 2 Kythian frigates as the Silver Wind maneuvered into position and attached tow cables to the crippled Morning Star. The Devourers, sensing the Coalition forces' vulnerability, pressed their attack with renewed fury. Plasma torpedoes filled the space around the task force. Particle beams carved through shields and armor. Ships that had survived a dozen engagements took damage that would require months of repair. But they held. The Velcran scouts, dancing at the edge of weapons range, drew off 3 Devourer ships. The Saurian destroyer, its armor scarred and burned, positioned itself directly between the enemy and the towing operation, taking hit after hit to protect the evacuation. And the tenacity, shields nearly gone, hull breaching in a dozen places, continued to harass the Devourer command ship with everything it had left. "Tow cables attached," Velthas reported, triumph in his voice. "Both ships are linked. Beginning acceleration. All ships, form on the Silver Wind. Overlapping shield coverage, maximum defensive formation." Marcus watched his tactical display, counting down. "Prepare for synchronized hyperspace jump on my mark." The task force contracted, wounded ships clustering together, their shields merging into a composite barrier that was stronger than any individual defense. It was a maneuver they'd practiced dozens of times in training, but never under such desperate circumstances. The Devourers recognized what was happening and threw everything they had at the Coalition forces, trying to cripple enough ships to prevent the escape. Energy weapons flared, missiles streaked through space, and the Coalition shields held, flickering on the edge of collapse, but refusing to break. "Jump coordinates locked," the navigator announced. "All ships report ready." Marcus took one last look at the Devourer fleet, at Earth Colony 7 hanging safe behind them, at the tactical display showing Task Force Deathworld battered but intact. "Jump," he ordered. Reality twisted. The stars elongated, and Task Force Deathworld escaped into hyperspace, leaving behind a Devourer fleet that had learned a critical lesson about humanity. When you threaten what humans protect, you don't face soldiers, you face fury.